Hello everyone, I'm Stacy Ellis. I'm currently a PhD candidate at Texas Women's University. I'm also a registered dietitian, and my channel is designed to help you achieve your goals, whether it is professionally, spiritually, nutritionally, whatever the case may be. I want you to live the best life you can and achieve the best health that you can. We are currently in a series about the PhD program. Being that I am currently in a PhD program, I figured, you guys probably would like some insight about it. I already did a video about what to expect from the PhD program, and so I pretty much go through from the beginning, from when you start your program, all the way to the end of what the different steps are throughout the PhD program. So if you're interested in that, there will be a link down below for that. But today, I actually thought it would be helpful to discuss with you the things that I wish I knew before I started my program. I know that many of you are just like me. You didn't necessarily have people in your life that got a PhD. You may have been the first person in your family to go to grad school or go to the PhD program. And so you really don't know, right? You're entering into this blindly. And that was the case for me. I already had received my master's degree, so I had some background with that. And my husband actually, and I didn't mention this on the last video, but he also received his master's degree, and he was, going to get his PhD, but decided, he wanted to be a teacher, that there was no need for it. So I did have that background, before entering the PhD program, but that's master's level information. It wasn't PhD level information. Now, granted, the information I'm stating here is based off of my own experience. It may not apply to other doctorate degrees, such as education leadership, or, if you're getting your MD, wherever the case may be. I only can speak of my own experience, and based off of the other people that I know in my program and other programs that I coordinate with what they've experienced as well. So these are a few things that I wish I knew before I started my PhD program. First and foremost, and I think this is probably the most important one, is the length of time that the PhD program may take. I already knew that the PhD program was going to be a long time because, if you're working on your PhD, it's a well-known fact that it takes time for that to happen. And so I actually went into this with the plan of getting through my classes fast, starting my research, getting things, up and going. And I had a timeline. And I had planned that I would actually get done in 3.5 years. That was my plan. But the truth of the matter is, no matter how hard you plan, things will come your way that you don't anticipate. So if depending upon your research, that will really affect how long your PhD will take. Your research, is so dependent upon so many factors that you have no control over. For example, I'm doing my research on humans, and so I have extra steps that I have to do in order to just do my research. I had to do an IRB. I had to also apply for grants to get the equipment that I needed and to pay my participants. And then in terms of recruiting for the participants, you may think that it'll only take you one semester to recruit everyone, but in all actuality, it may take longer. The same thing could be applied to other types of research. You may be working in the lab and, maybe you're working on cell cultures or, pipetting different things. And, with that type of an environment, you can control it a lot more than human studies, but things can still come up with that as well. For example, here in Texas, a little over a year ago, we had the big freeze. And with that, the power went out for days on end. And so people who were working in the lab, the refrigeration, actually, the electricity went out. And so all their cells and samples got destroyed and they had to start over. So things can come up that you're not anticipating. And you can't just say to your committee, well, this happened, you graduate me anyways. You have to still do the research. It doesn't matter, that the electricity went out. It doesn't matter that you were unable to recruit as many people as you need in one semester. You still have to do your research and you have to complete it. And so that was something that I wasn't anticipating. I had plans on getting done by a certain time, and that didn't happen. Put on top of that, COVID, right? So COVID obviously, put a damper on the length of time to complete. And so that's something that you definitely want to keep in mind if you're going to do a PhD. It can take a lot longer than you anticipated. So, like I said, it's solely dependent upon your research, and the different steps that are involved. And you can try to plan research that won't take as long. But again, it's not completely in your control. So looking back, if I knew that my PhD would have took me as long, I might have made different decisions about my life. Like I said, if I knew, then that would have probably changed some things regarding just my life in general. So do keep that in mind if you had plans, if you planned on being in your career by a certain time, if you planned on getting married, having kids, traveling, whatever the case may be. Because when you're working on your PhD, you have to be flexible. It's not going to be just automatically 4 years you're done and you graduate. The average PhD can actually take 6 years, and it's very rare for people to get done before then. So just keep that in mind as you are, making plans for your future. If there's something that is time-based, you definitely want to keep that into consideration. The second thing that I wish I knew before I started my PhD program, again, mind you, I didn't have people that got a PhD to tell me these things. I mean, there were some people in our program that, could tell us things. So along the way, I learned things. But before I actually started my PhD program, I did not know about PostDocs. And some of you guys might think I'm crazy. You probably already know about it. But if you come from a background where, like I said, no one in your family got a PhD, the idea of a postdoc is foreign. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know that was a thing. And so for those of you who were like me, who's like, postdoc, what's that? So generally what happens after you get your PhD, a lot of times people think, oh, you get your PhD and you're done. Well, not necessarily. That's not necessarily true. So what typically would happen after you get your PhD, if you're trying to do an academic career or if you're trying to do research, you would then seek out a postdoc after you graduate. And the postdoc is just a continuation of your training where you work underneath another professor, another researcher, and you get more training on the research skills. There are some postdocs that may be more teacher-based, where you just learn, how to be a professor, learn how to teach, at a college level, because it's obviously different than teaching high school. So those are also available. However, to get a postdoc, it's very, very competitive. And so if I knew ahead of time when I started my program, I would have took that into consideration as, as I would create my CV. So to get a postdoc, there's several things that people look at. They look at how much research you have done, how many publications you have done, what your involvement has been in research, what your involvement has been in teaching at the university, involvement on campus, so many different things. And so for me, I didn't do a ton of publications. I did not do a ton of outside research outside of my own current study. I have been involved in a firefighter study, but in terms of like grand scheme of things of the amount of research that I've done compared to other people, it's not as much. And so if I were to have known that, I probably would have took more initiative in being involved in different research projects. Now, with that being said, it's not all in your control. So I actually went to every single professor during my master's program, and I talked to them and I sought out what type of research they were doing, and I asked them if they needed help to let me know. I should have been more diligent in that effort because, quite frankly, they did not come to me for help. And maybe it's because, they saw I was already busy with my own research, or they forgot, or, maybe there's other factors in play. But if I knew the importance of it, I did not know the importance of it until literally after I had done my qualifiers exam and I was starting my dissertation, literally towards the end of my program. And that's another thing that for me was very frustrating, to have gone that long period of time taking all these classes and it wasn't specified to me. I've seen people doing research and I was doing my own research, but it wasn't ingrained in me the importance of publications, the importance of doing research and getting the experience. And in part, I had a fear, and this goes back to, if you're new and you're the first person in your family, some things can be intimidating. And I remember working in the lab during my master's degree, and we were doing pipetting, and I had a hard time doing it. I was like, I can't do this. And so that stuck with me. And so I think that was also in part, I wasn't motivated enough to seek out the other research areas because of that. And so I want to encourage you, especially if you're in the sciences, to seek out other projects and really get involved. Your advisor is mostly concerned about their own research. So like my advisor, I'm on his research team and I'm helping out with his study. There's going to be other studies that's going to be happening that I will be able to help out with here soon. But I'm near the end of my program now. So he's starting these other research topics towards the end of my program. So there wasn't really that much for me to get involved with, right? There was only really one research study that I could get involved with. And so you have to be your own advocate, and you'll have to really, if you really want to get the experience and build your CV and build your publications, you need to go and speak to the other faculty. Not that you need to jump on every single study. There's no reason to do that. But, become familiar with the study. See if they do need help. Even if it's little things here and there. You don't have to necessarily be the main person, but if you could just gain some experience working with the different equipment, so that way, it'll just help you overall as a researcher. Now, you may not be interested in doing research. I've learned, and this is another thing, I guess, that, going along with this, you may think that you know what you're going to do when you graduate, but as you're in the program, you will learn more about yourself and your capabilities, and you will learn that there's actually more possibilities that you can do with the PhD than you anticipated. So that would be my third thing that I guess I knew, is all of the different capacities in terms of careers with your PhD. I came into the PhD program just to get the degree for credibility. As a dietitian, they're actually moving dietitians to get their master's degree. And being that that's the case, in I believe it's in 2024, if you're going to become a dietitian, you have to have a master's degree. Well, I already had my master's degree, and I wanted to set myself, at a higher bar, set myself as like a leader in the industry. And so I was like, okay, well, if they're going to require a master's degree, then I'm going to get my PhD. And that really was in part why I did it. It just made sense to me, especially being a woman of color in a dietetic field. I felt it was important to have extra credentials to help me be more competitive in the field. However, there's a lot more that you can do with a PhD than just have the credentials. And I was not exposed to that until I voluntarily took a class. I already had all my courses that I needed, but there was a class that was offered. It was a brand new class that talked about pretty much that, like what you can do with your PhD. It was like a career development type of class. And I learned that, yes, I could work as a professor in industry. Like, there's so many avenues that I could work with a PhD. And that goes along with what I was saying earlier. By not knowing that, I did not utilize my time as effectively as I could have in terms of getting the research experience that I probably should have tried to do and been a little bit more diligent with doing. A lot of these careers are research-based, but they're not all research-based. And so it just helps. Even if you don't want to be in research, having those things on your CV helps. It just helps. So I want to encourage you, if you are working on your PhD and it's science-based in particular, if it's not science-based, I would encourage you, like if it's fine arts or, whatever the case may be, do publications. Publications, for sure. Like, every semester, try to get a publication out. Try to write a review. Try to, you'll have your big articles from your thesis and your dissertations, but try to do small publications throughout as well, because that's going to help you build your CV and gain more experience. So that was something that I wish I knew beforehand. Now, granted, I don't want anyone to think that my university didn't do a good job at informing me. Like I said, they did develop that class because they realized that there was students that weren't aware, including me. And like I said, I'm sure that many of you, if you're working on your PhD or you're thinking about it, you may have not even known that this is a thing. Going along with this, so you can also seek opportunities outside your university, like during the summer. So I had a friend that actually went to another state to do research during the summer. Actually, I had two friends that did that. They sought out, they needed help for a research, scenario at another location, and they went for the summer. And obviously that improved their CV. They gained more experience. They knew that they weren't going to be able to get that type of experience at the university, and so they sought that out. So, if you are in a situation where there's not a lot of faculty that has opportunities for you, that's something that you can look into. Is just working under someone during the summer. And sometimes they actually have programs during the school year as well where you can work remotely. Just know that if you're doing that, you need to make sure it's something that you can handle in conjunction with your classes and your current research that you're working on. So that was reason number 3, or point number 3 that, I wish I knew. Point number 4, that I would say that I wish I knew how people were going to react to me being in school. So there's definitely a huge difference between how people act towards you when you have your master's degree versus when you're working on your PhD. And I can only imagine how people will react to me once I actually have my PhD. And so what do I mean by that when I say I wish I knew how people were going to react to me? So there's not that many people that get a PhD. It's very, very small. Obviously, like if you go to any university, you're going to have a lot of people working on their bachelor's. You're going to have a smaller amount of people working on their master's, and then an even smaller amount working on their PhD. And so you're already part of a minority. But a lot of times, and I don't know if it's because of my personality, the color of my skin, or the way I act. I can act goofy sometimes. I don't know. But whenever I mention it to someone that I'm working on my PhD, there's always this like they're surprised. And sometimes people actually make a facial expression, like they're super surprised that I'm working on it. And maybe it's because, like I said, not that many people work on a PhD, and it just seems to be something that, like, why would you do that? Like, I understand most people wouldn't want to be in school that long. But sometimes, too, people just act differently after they realize that. And it's kind of uncomfortable in some situations. It's gotten to the point where now I don't even tell people. I just say, when they ask me what I do, I'll just say that I'm a dietitian, or I'll say I'm a student, and I'll leave it at that. And if they ask my major, a lot of times they ask majors for people working on their bachelor's degree, I just say nutrition with minor in kines, and I just had them assume that I'm working on my bachelor's degree. Sometimes it might come to a point where they're may ask me more questions, and then I'll say I'm in grad school. And if it comes to a point where they're like, oh, you're working on your master's, then I'll be honest and I'll say, no, I'm working on my PhD. But I won't just come up front and tell people that I'm working on my PhD because of just that. I don't want people to act differently around me just because I'm working on my PhD. And especially when I say it's nutrition, because a lot of times whenever I say nutrition, people think I'm the food police, and they assume that I'm judging the way that they eat. And on top of that, whether it's me talking about me being a dietitian or me talking about my major being nutrition, people start soliciting for advice. And, I don't mind, talking about nutrition from here, time to time. But that's what I do. That's not who I am. I know some people, they are their career. It's just one aspect of me, and I don't want to always talk about nutrition. And that might sound bad, but it's the truth. I love nutrition, but I don't love it that much to talking about it all day long. I already spent all day working on my dissertation, seeing clients and whatnot. On my downtime, I don't want to talk about nutrition. It's not, it's just not something that, at first, when I became a dietitian, I was so excited to talk about it all the time. I was learning the material. But now that I've been doing it for a while, I've learned what I've learned. I want to help people, but I don't want to just always talk about nutrition. So yeah. But yeah, so that is something that you do want to keep in mind. If you're working on your PhD, people will react differently towards you. And with that in mind too, I was not expecting the comments. I wasn't anticipating so many comments. So remember I stated that the PhD program, the PhD process is a long process. The average person feels that school shouldn't be that long. And if you are someone like me, if you've been in school nonstop and you were working on your master's degree and now you're working on your PhD, people tend to think that, like, what's wrong with you? Why are you still in school? You know, whether you're working on your PhD or not, it's almost a matter of like, well, you need to graduate. Why are you not graduated yet? Like, there's something wrong here. Why aren't you done? Like, you should be done. Because people don't understand that a PhD program actually takes a lot longer. And so you'll get comments here and there. You'll have people, you know, and granted, I understand people trying to make small talk, but they might ask you, you know, so when are you going to graduate? Like, that's the common question I get all the time. When are you going to graduate? When I know, I'll let you know. Like, it's not, like I said, it's not completely in your control. It's not like with your bachelor's degree where you can plan it out and you know for sure you're going to get done at this time. And so be prepared to have people ask you that over and over again. Be prepared for people to think that you're doing something wrong for not being done. I get that a lot as well, because people just don't understand that it's not completely under your control. Literally, like, sometimes you have to, like, it's dependent upon other people. You have to wait for approvals. You have to wait for funding. You have to wait for equipment. You have to wait for, you know, other people that helping you with your study. And, you know, whenever you defend, you have to make sure it's at a time that your whole committee's there. If you have a committee member that doesn't work during the summer, then even though you get done in the summer, you can't defend until they're there. You know, so there's a lot of factors that people, they don't think about. And you have to be strong in your mental capacity with all of these different things. Because, you know, because you have no control over when you get done, you could have people who started the PhD program after you, and they might get done before you. It does not mean that they're smarter than you. It does not mean that they work faster or harder. It's just their research project that they did. You know, if they did something where they just had to look at data and write a paper on the data, yeah, they're going to get done a lot faster than someone that has to recruit human participants. So just keep that in mind. You know, you have to be strong. And, you know, people are going to say their comments. I had professors say comments. They'll ask me all the time, when are you going to get done? How's it going? It doesn't bother me anymore because I know people are just, they're making small talk and they want to see me progress. But at first it did bother me because I wanted to get done a long time ago, before COVID. So I'm past that at this point. But you can imagine what, like, you have to be mentally prepared, right? It's going to be a challenge that you have to be mentally prepared for, because it will be hard. You know, you think you're going to get done by a certain time and you have to put your life on hold, you know, so just be prepared for that. So as you can see in summary, the majority of these things that I wish I knew before I started my program has to do with, in part, the time that it will take, you know, and the, you know, during your time here, what you should be doing. So if you find this helpful, this information helpful, please give me a thumbs up so that way other people who are considering to get a PhD, they can find this video. If you have a PhD yourself, or you are currently working on a PhD and you have other things that you find to be difficulty that you wish you knew before you got into the PhD program, then I want you to go ahead and share your comments down below so that way we can help other people regarding the PhD process. And if you have any questions regarding the process, leave those down below as well. Like I said, I'm in a series and I will be putting other videos out regarding these topics. And with that being said, I will be doing a part 2 talking about the actual process itself when you are in your classes and doing your research. What are things that you should be prepared for that you might want to take into account. This is just a broad overview of just the process in general, but then we'll go into details about just each component in the next video. Thank you guys for watching to the end, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.